On Monday, October 12th, communities, cities, universities, towns, both big and small, will recognize and celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. This is the day that began in 1989 in South Dakota to recognize the presence and contributions of Indigenous persons. It has grown in most recent years as people began to reevaluate Columbus Day. For many, Indigenous Peoples Day will replace Columbus Day, yet there are many cities that have not recognized an official recognition of this day. Today, there are 574 tribes, nations, and villages in this country alone. Think about that diversity. Each has its own history, language, and culture. That represents much great diversity in this country. We have made tremendous contributions to this country and to this United Methodist Church. Before our native tribes from the southeastern part of this country were removed from their homelands, we had encountered missionaries from the Methodist Church. They taught our ancestors about their religion, and tribal peoples in turn taught them much about the land. From this way that Christianity was taught, it was very similar to our indigenous way of life. Treat others good, love one another, take care of one another, worship Creator God. And because of those similarities, our ancestors accepted Christianity, only to be removed from the land a short time later by some of the very ones who taught us about the Christian faith. Yet our ancestors lived out those lessons from the Bible. Their faithfulness along those trails of tears was amazing, walking hundreds of miles from their homelands to what is now Oklahoma. They sang songs of hope and faith along that journey, even as they lost many of their relatives. We still sing those hymns in our churches today. Yet our ancestors lived out those lessons from the Bible. Their faithfulness along those trails of tears was amazing, walking hundreds of miles from the homelands to what is now Oklahoma. They sang the songs of hope and faith along that journey. When our ancestors arrived in Indian Territory in Oklahoma, one of the very first things they did was to reestablish their Methodist churches. Today, over 180 years later, some of those churches still exist. What a great testament to their faith. Native peoples today continue in our efforts to live out our values, to do what we can to be good relatives to all. We make a difference in the lives of many across this world. We are proud people who continue to live out our faith in God. This has been a monumental year for Indigenous peoples. Native organizations and persons have worked hard for years to eliminate the name Redskins from the now Washington NFL team. It was the movement of Black Lives Matter that brought more attention to this racist mascot that was removed earlier this year. We are so thankful for so many who worked years on this issue. Attention was given this year also to the Supreme Court case as it made a decision in the case McGirt versus the state of Oklahoma. This case goes back to the removal of the Muskogee Creek people and 4 other tribes that now call Oklahoma home. After removal, reservations in the eastern side of Oklahoma were abolished and the land had a new distinction. However, the Supreme Court ruled that Congress did not de-establish the Muskogee Creek Nation's reservation, set aside in the early 19th century. Therefore, the land remains Indian country for the purpose of criminal jurisdiction. The result means that nearly 19 million acres of land among these 5 tribes could be considered once again an Indian reservation. Indigenous communities celebrated the passage of 2 bills in Congress just last month, the Not Invisible Act and Savannah's Act. These 2 bills addressed the epidemic of violence against Native women, commonly referred to as missing and murdered Indigenous women. Statistics show that Native American women are particularly vulnerable to violence in their lifetimes. On some reservations, for instance, Native women are murdered at a rate 10 times the national average. And across the board, more than 4 in 5 American Indian and Alaska Native women have experienced violence in their lifetimes, whether it be sexual violence or physical at the hands of a partner. Yet it seems we're making some progress among our Indigenous communities. And yes, we still have a long ways to go. There's much we need to do to address the issues of injustices and social ills of our people. And we cannot do this on our own. We do not have the political clout in this country, nor in the United Methodist Church. Support and encouragement and allies are all needed for us to make this journey together. We are thankful for the advocacy of the General Board of Church and Society, who has supported so many of our efforts for social justice and inclusion and an advocacy for Indigenous peoples around the world. Proverbs 3:27 reads, "Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, when it is in your power to act. One of the great values of Indigenous peoples is the understanding of community. Indigenous people understand that decisions made in our lives do not just affect one person, but they are made knowing they affect the entire community. We understand our community as the whole world. We care for and we pray for all people. Shining Arrows of the Crow tribe once said, if you have 100 people who live together, and if each one cares for the rest, there is one mind. As we recognize and celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day around this country, I invite you to join us on this journey.